Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Driving Revenue Growth Management webcast. We appreciate your interest and we're excited for the opportunity to share some of our thinking around analytics for revenue growth management. Quick introductions. My name is Emily. I'm joined by my colleague Lauren, and we are both data and analytics consultants with Thorogood. We're both based out of our US offices. I'm stationed in Philadelphia, and Lauren is representing our Boston office. Agenda for the webcast today, we'll start with a quick intro to Thorogood, but we'll spend most of our time in sections 2 and 3. I'll provide an overview of revenue growth management, shedding some light on where we are currently, or where most of us are currently, and where we need to be. Then we'll segue into the 5 levers, where Lauren and I will offer some insight and examples on how to elevate your current revenue growth management strategy. But first, a little bit about us. Who are we? What do we do? Big picture, we help our customers make sense of their data. We're an independent and specialist data and analytics company with a focus on data engineering, data science, and data visualization. Our approach is rooted in understanding business goals and using the capabilities of technology to meet these goals. So customers and business objectives are always at the forefront of our approach. We're a global company with offices and consultants in Asia, Europe, and the Americas, and we offer a full range of services when it comes to data and analytics. That includes data and technology strategies and roadmaps, end-to-end implementation of cloud solutions, user empowerment, analytic services, and so on. Our customers are typically multinational blue chip organizations. I have a few listed on the screen, and most of our clients fall into one of 4 verticals, those being consumer goods, pharma and life sciences, financial services, and insurance, as these industries tend to be very data rich, but we're certainly not limited to these 4 verticals. We are independent in that we don't work with one specific technology. Instead, we work and partner with many of the key players in the market in order to provide our clients with the solution that best suits their particular needs. All right, enough about us. I want to dive right into revenue growth management. Before we do that, let's pause for a minute to just level set on why we're talking about revenue growth management and why we're talking about it today in 2021. So revenue growth management, or RGM, is a well-known concept and in widespread practice. Organizations, generally speaking, know what it is, they value it, and they often have people, teams, or entire divisions dedicated to RGM. We're talking about it today because over the past few years, we've experienced a series of changing conditions that are really requiring us to reevaluate and rethink our approach to RGM. So those changing conditions, just to name a few: the proliferation of data, rapidly and drastically changing consumer trends, shifts in traditional channels and modalities, advances in cloud computing, the availability of open source libraries, the evolution of analytics tools and capabilities, supply chain disruptions, and inflation. I would argue, and maybe this is less of an argument and more of a fact, a few of these conditions have changed even more rapidly and drastically due to the pandemic. According to McKinsey, across markets, 25 to 40% of consumers have tried different brands since COVID-19 started, and demand has spiked for categories like health and wellness and at-home needs. According to a Bain global survey of more than 1,700 B2B business leaders, 85% of management teams believe their pricing decisions need improvement, and only 15% have effective tools and dashboards to set and monitor prices. So, moral of the story here, conditions are changing. Those changes were exacerbated by the pandemic, and companies are recognizing a need to evolve. Back to revenue growth management. What exactly is RGM? So we can really break it down into revenue, so that being income, especially when of a company or organization. Growth, the process of increasing in amount. And then management, the act of dealing with or controlling things. So all of that together, revenue growth management is a defined set of strategies to control or grow an organization's increasing income. The objective is generally to maximize profit, revenue, and or market share, depending on which metric you want to focus on, from a brand and product portfolio. RGM looks different for everyone. Companies take different approaches to manage and drive their revenue growth. Some take proactive approaches while others are more reactive. Different tools are used, different levels of investment, different tactics and strategies. Companies prioritize different levers. RGM is really unique to every organization, but there are fundamental principles to understand. Going with that, I mentioned companies approach RGM from different levers. Let's break that down. Revenue growth management is a pretty general term that is in and of itself pretty hard to action just because it is such a broad term. So we've broken it down, not me, but analysts, theorists, economists, etc., have broken RGM down into 5 levers. These levers are essentially different angles or perspectives by which companies can approach their overall revenue management strategy. Lauren and I will break these down into a bit more detail later in the presentation, but as a quick overview, the 5 levers are brand portfolio pricing, so how do we price our goods? Channel pack pricing, also referred to as pack price architecture. How can we tweak our offerings to maximize market share? Mix management, so what products do we sell where and alongside which other products? Promotional management, how, when, and where do we offer promotions? And lastly, trade terms management, so how can we best manage our relationship with retailers? Traditional methods and approaches for RGM generally follow a pattern somewhat similar to what I'm going to walk through right now. So we'll start with data. Generally, we're pulling on internal and point of sales data. So we can look at sales by channel, profit breakdown by brand, basket mix, etc. And we're also pulling in third-party or market data. So companies will generally buy from IRI or Nielsen and extract overall market data. So some information on how our competitors are doing, overall market trends, and so on. From there, we engineer that data. So we map and normalize it. And in an ideal world, we create a clean, scalable, and business relevant data model. From that data model, we can start building calculations. So aggregations, percentages, year-over-year changes, etc. And then we package all of that data and all of that analysis. We package that all up and display everything in a nice user interface. So this is where a Power BI or Tableau tool would come in. And from here, we or our analysts or our pricing teams or our marketing teams will make decisions. So a sample of the end user view of what RGM is, this is just an example of what that might look like. This is a Power BI dashboard with anonymized data. But what we're doing here with this dashboard, we're pulling out KPIs and trends. We'll generally see certain KPIs such as retailer margin, overall business, year-over-year dollar and percent changes, breakdowns by channel, modality, brand. It's just another view. We can throw in some trend lines, some alerts if we hit or go below a certain threshold. But this is a general view of what RGM could potentially look like at an organization. So that's all well and good. But if you remember all the way back to the beginning of this presentation, we level set on a few things. In addition to some innate issues with this traditional RGM process, those changing conditions that we discussed are actually extremely disruptive to this architecture. Let's start with analytics. We're finding that much of the analytics is done in a black box, meaning that analysts and business users don't exactly understand how the numbers that they're seeing are being calculated and produced. This has the potential to create distrust, and if users distrust numbers, they are much less likely to make decisions based off of those numbers. Internal data and third-party market data. It's not that we don't want to include this data, but this is just simply not enough. We're missing out on too much information, and these sources are not resilient to dynamic change. We saw this with COVID-19. Historic data and historic trends did not uphold against the rapidly changing market. Businesses couldn't make decisions based off their historic data because their historic data essentially stopped working. And then lastly, this is a pretty slow process. Maybe not even slow, but even just as fast is really a shortcoming here. From a competitive advantage standpoint, If we can get to insights faster and act on those insights faster than competitors, then we have an advantage. Traditional RGM approaches don't really have a built-in framework for quickly experimenting with, implementing, and ultimately productionizing any changes that we make. Really, the point of this webcast and what we ultimately hope to convey is that we don't need to accept those shortcomings as that's just how it is. We can take action to proactively avoid and circumvent them. So, for example, we can incorporate new external data sources such as social media data, weather data, more demographic information, weekly economic indexes. We can just put more data into our systems. In addition, we can build in robust AI and ML algorithms that are resilient to change. And ultimately, we can embed this process into an ML ops framework for visibility and rapid time to value. All right, at this point, I'm going to transition into the 5 levers where Lauren and I will walk through the objectives, offer some strategies and use cases on each of the 5 levers. So we will start with brand portfolio pricing. The objective of brand portfolio pricing is really to identify the optimal prices and pricing model for your product portfolio. So what are customers willing to pay for your product? If we look at a model of our prices in comparison to how many units we're selling, we want to land somewhere in that peak range to maximize revenue. So really just pricing as high as you can, but not too high that customers stop buying. How can we elevate traditional RGM approaches to refine our analysis here? And the key is really more data. We can use additional data points to enrich analysis, to enrich any AI or ML algorithms, and create a more holistic view of how we shape our pricing strategies. Traditionally, we use internal data, forecasting models, market data, etc. But when we incorporate ML, these algorithms can continuously and constantly learn patterns and incorporate new data and changes. And when we bring in more data, we can build algorithms that pull on weather data, seasonality, holidays, etc. And in this ML framework, I want to emphasize the feature engineering step. This requires a bit of domain knowledge, but it will allow analysts and data scientists to play around with different variables, look at different angles of those variables, and ultimately the effect of each of those variables on forecasts and models. And ideally, this feature engineering and our machine learning is built into a larger ML ops framework for rapid productionization and quick time to value. But that's a bit of a digression from today's content. All right, the second lever, channel pack pricing or pack price architecture. Our second lever, pack price architecture. And the objective here is to identify and implement product or packaging changes that will result in the greatest sales and or profit growth. So essentially, how can you optimize product offerings to improve margins, grow your share, etc.? Just another way to phrase this, we want to provide the right format, pack, and price for each purchase occasion and shopper mission in every channel. Some guiding questions here. What features are customers willing to pay for, and how much will they pay for these features? Do I have to worry about cannibalizing other products in my portfolio? So, for example, will this new product compete with an existing product that I offer? A tangible example of a successful pack price architecture move or strategy is actually from Coca-Cola. So looking at declining soda consumption trends, the team at Coca-Cola tweaked an existing product that really played into this declining trend. So what did they do? They created a mini version of the classic Coca-Cola can. So they took the 12 ounce, shrunk it down to 7.5 ounces, and immediate sales growth. So how do we elevate our pack price architecture strategy? Again, we can look to incorporate more data into our advanced analytics. Particularly, we want data that will give insight into share of voice, so social media or web search data, share of preference, so consumer panels, product reviews, etc., and share of distribution. So this would come from market data, stock out information, shelf metrics, etc. And an example of something that we've done for customers is a market share stealer analysis. So traditionally, companies will look at their share changes, then they'll look at other brands or product share changes, and they'll make some inferences about what happened. So if my share is down, I may just sort the list and see, well, who's winning. The approach we've taken with customers looks to get a more sophisticated view in which entities, be that brands, pack types, etc., are your greatest competition over a period of time. So to do that, we use correlation. Correlation is just how close is the relationship between the movements in my share versus someone else's share. And in particular, what we'll look to identify is where there are the greatest negative correlations. So that's to say, where are there instances where a drop in my share is highly correlated with an increase in someone else's share, or vice versa? Though the notion of correlation is fairly straightforward and is something most business users can understand and appreciate the result of, the power of this approach comes in putting the processing power behind being able to run these correlations over many combinations of fields. So we can compare our brand to every other brand, but we can also run it for every combination of pack types or against the category or particular size products. And by doing this, we can effectively see exactly who's stealing share from who. That kind of concludes the pack price architecture strategy. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren to take us through the final three levers.
So mix management. The net margin and revenue growth of products is inconsistent. Products or brands perform differently in different stores or channels based on several factors. Demand varies, profits vary, and therefore adapting your mix to cater to different segments, audiences, and platforms is important. More importantly, this isn't just a one-off exercise. Regular reviews of product assortment are essential to keep pace and ideally get ahead of changing trends. And so we can relate this back to the Coca-Cola example. The 12-ounce pack may sell well in regions A and C and have success in bulk packaging through e-commerce channels, while the 7.5-ounce pack may be stronger in regions B and D and have success in drugstores and grocery stores. Mix management means using this information and making sure each pack size is stocked in the regions and channels that it is successful in. So currently, this is a highly complex and time-consuming process. We can utilize machine learning to enhance and optimize this process. Automating the machine learning model can help increase responsiveness and drive quicker action. There are many applications and use cases around mix management. A specific one that I'll highlight today is SKU rationalization, also known as SKU optimization, reduction, or simplification, and it is the process of determining whether to keep or remove items by weighing the cost of manufacturing and stocking against selling the item. SKU rationalization automates the analysis of which SKUs should be discontinued using artificial intelligence and machine learning. First, it combines external point of sales and internal supply chain data. Then it clusters the data based on attributes like volume and price. Then it generates a demand forecast to predict sales volume and uses those forecasts and attributes to suggest keeping or dropping a product. This model also allows you to include other attributes in your analysis, be it a particular retail or geographical area. This model provides a better resiliency to supply chain disruption, reduces costs in the face of unpredictable demand, and rapidly innovates in response to changing consumer behavior. So now let's talk about promotion management. Promotions are all over the place these days, and it is only expected that there are promotions. So identifying the really effective ones and assessing their return on investment is important. You can work with finance teams to understand which of your promotions are contributing to overall top-line growth. However, the involvement of multiple teams poses a challenge. For example, the finance team may need to see different sets of data at different granularities than the marketing team. So how can you alleviate these challenges? The answer here is using advanced analytics models like forecasting and post-event analysis. One approach to this is trade promotions optimization, which is designed to plan and assess promotions. The approach's methodology is to take internal data, external data, and operational system data, and use AI and ML to create analytics models. For promotion management, a forecast will tell the business how a promotion is expected to be received. A post-event analysis will tell the business how a promotion was actually received, and an ROI model can give more specifics on the return of investment for the promotion. And so lastly, we have trade terms management. This is where CPG manufacturers and retailers negotiate pricing terms to maximize profits for both parties. These negotiations can be tense, so having the proper information to back a proposed trade term is important. This is especially true when negotiating a trade term for a new product or channel. But how can you get the information you need? Advanced analytics can provide that information through forecasting, scenario modeling, and price elasticity models. Once again, trade promotions optimization can be used as an approach to this. Using internal, external, and operational system data, a price elasticity model, for example, will use a combination of regression techniques to show a change in demand in response to a change in price. AI and ML will cluster groups of items, which allows the model to compare between channels. And knowing price elasticity helps a brand pinpoint the price that maximizes its profits and helps in negotiations with retailers. Now that we've gone through the 5 levers, how do you put them all into practice? How do you define actions that can result in tangible value? Here's a framework that we think is pretty useful. We found that it provides a holistic way to approach the different facets of RGM and other data and analytics objectives. So we have data, people, process, and tools. They don't function individually. It's the combination of these 4 pillars working together that helps deliver success and value. Let's dive into it in some more detail, and we'll highlight some of the key questions and considerations that will be valuable as you start to think of how you can drive or accelerate revenue growth management. I've listed some considerations and questions for each of these pillars, which are by no means an exhaustive list that should give you a high-level sense of this approach. So let's start with data. Think about how you can supplement your existing analyses and data sets with additional information, be it social media information, demographics, new data providers, etc. It's not only about acquiring new data, but delivering it in a streamlined and efficient manner through automated processes. Making it accessible to your analysts is equally important. And on the people front, first and foremost, identify your key stakeholders so you can understand their main objectives and get their acceptance and input on the direction you may want to pursue. Then, identify the skills that you need to actually implement this, specifically from a technical perspective. There are additional considerations as to whether you build those skills internally, buy those skills through external hiring and recruitment, or just borrow on a temporary basis. But lining up a team with the necessary skills is critical. Finally, you're likely to have many differently structured teams, so ensuring appropriate organization, communication, and ways of working is key to ensuring success. And moving on to process. Make sure your overarching objectives revolve around increasing efficiency and speed to get quicker access to data and insights. So consider any initiative focused on driving those benefits. A lot of what we've spoken about today is about elevating our analysis by using ML and advanced analytics, and a key component to productionizing machine learning is MLOps, both for driving operational efficiency and business value. And then finally, on the tools front. A fairly obvious one that you need to consider is what tools you might need to support your various activities, like data ingestion, preparation, data science, or data visualization. You also want to consider who the end user is and pick the tool that is best suited to them. Thinking holistically across these pillars and finding solutions customized for your organization will take you forward in driving your RGM initiatives. And that brings us to the end of today's webcast. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions or would like to learn a bit more about how we've helped our customers with RGM, please reach out. On behalf of Emily and I, thank you very much for joining us today.